Hey, it's Jason ODB, the Lincoln Addict. We're going to go through this 1963 Lincoln Continental dealer brochure. I did want to show briefly the difference between the 61 and the 63. I would ask, if you get a chance, go to lincolnaddict.com. You can find ways to listen to the podcast. You can also buy stickers. We have one for sale in either blue or white, or you can buy a 2-pack and save a couple dollars. But hit up lincolnaddict.com. Appreciate all the support. Now, if we look at these, this one is the size-wise, it is slightly shorter, and you can see it is a lot darker. So 61, you had the white with the embossed guy there, logo, and then here you got the darker colors. Now, at the end of this video, I will roll in, I'll try to place the link to this one. So if you want to click through, if you haven't watched the flip through of this one, I'll go through it. Thanks to everybody that has, and also thanks to everybody that's came back on the channel. If you get a chance, please subscribe, leave a comment. It helps the channel, and also leave a thumbs up. So this is the 63 Lincoln Continental brochure. There's not a lot of pages in it, but I think these are unique to go through. I do collect this kind of stuff, as you guys would imagine. And this is for your viewing pleasure. You can take screenshots as you need. I do film in 4K, so you can bump it up through your settings if you need a more clear image here. So the challenge was no easy one. Find ways to enhance the performance characteristics and the riding and driving luxury of the world's finest automobile. So you see here significant advances in room and power, and you've got the logo here. Now, one thing I like about these is you have these photos that span from the left page to the right page. I think that's good use of space, and it kind of really reinforces the elegance. You could imagine going to the dealer back in the day and sitting there debating on purchasing one of these cars. They want to have a really good presentation. I know Chris Dunn, for instance, his family purchased these cars, as many of you guys did, or your families potentially, from the dealer back in those days. And shout out to Chris at Lincoln Land. He's a great guy, and I know he's got a lot of this literature, and always look up to his collection and the amazing stuff that they have over at Lincoln Land. But you can see here, even those who appreciate every line of the classic Lincoln Continental will hardly note the modification design. So you can imagine 61, 2s, and 3s are very, very similar. One of the things that is the standout between 63 and 64 was the change to the rear there. And of course, you would fuel the fuel fillers right there, right? I believe on 61, 2, and 3s. And then, of course, 64 and 65, we can actually jump right over here, is on the rear quarter panel. So there's a 65 in red. But here, if you want to, and I apologize for the shadow, the lighting in here, I have new LED lights, but depending on the angle, there is a little bit of a shadow there. So there's the rest of it. But good use of just, I think, the photos. I mean, these long cars spanning from left to right. So here you have classic grace commanding action. And again, you know, they're trying to appeal to the folks at that time that would have been able to afford one of these cars. If you look at, you know, 6,300 to 6,500, and you equate that to today's money, I believe it's like 65, 70,000-ish. Keep me honest there. So, you know, they had folks, you know, they were targeting people with a little bit more income, of course. So they were kind of going after that certain crowd, if you will, folks that could afford these cars. This is one of my favorite photos, and one thing I love about looking at these dealer brochures is seeing these interiors, because if you think about it, there's not a lot of photos that exist of this stuff. So these brochures, to me, really offer great insight into what it was like to have one of these cars when they were brand new. You know, these real crisp colors. And in 61, 2s, and 3s, of course, the door panels are also different. The dash is different. There's a lot of differences. But you can kind of see there how everything looks. I mean, a very cool photo Or I doubt this is an illustration, but maybe it is technically. But man, it just looks really, really good. I have always, although I love the 64, 65 dashes, I think these dashes are pretty cool. We'll see another image of it here in a minute. And I loved how the vents were built in there. You can kind of see to the right. My buddy Tony, he's always been a fan of these patterns, and I have been as well, because if you look at a lot of the cars you see at shows today, or just in general, I don't think this pattern was used as much. Of course, in the convertibles, they came with the leather standard, so most of the cars that I've seen are the one standard kind of leather, but it is pretty cool to see the other stuff. There were other options available. And if you go down that bunny trail sometimes, I mean, there's a lot of colors, a lot of different things, and I want to do something similar to this in my 64 eventually. But pretty cool photo again there, the left to right. You've got the rear row, the front row, right, the bench seats, if you will, and just a real cool image. So here you go. Here is the dash. And we'll take a look first here at first touch of Slim. And you see first glance at the satin finish. So pretty cool. Had a little bit of a shadow when I was trying to read through the phone there. But again, these dashes, I mean, awesome. I think they're pretty cool. There's a few different videos out there on YouTube, some good ones. I think there's one where a couple of the driving videos, and they just talk about how all of the instrument panel, everything was kind of right there. It was real easy to get to. One thing that I haven't talked about, I guess a lot, is just the differences in the dashes, and you can tell from 61, 2, and 3 to the 64s and 5s, they're a lot different. Maybe I'll do a comparison in the future. But one of the things is the pods. I kind of dig these, and I have one of these extra pods in my office that's lit up with some lights with that are on a battery, and it's pretty cool at night to light it up and kind of see some of it there. But pretty cool. I know what I was going to say. The ignition. So in 4 and 5, which I can speak to, is on the, you with your hand, the key is over here on the lower dash, we call it. In 1, 2, and 3, I believe all 3 years, it was over here. So it's a little bit different of a change. You think about turning the key with your left hand, and then boom, with the right hand over there. But you've got, again, your instrument, your knobs there, your air conditioning, things like that. And then you can see Chris Dunn has a really, really, really nice dash hanging in his garage. That's, reminds me of this. I think it is a black one, if I remember correctly. And Tim Nill, rest in peace, that had the Lincoln Ranch, he had one as well, kind of hanging in his shop, which was the old John Cashman facility out there in Lithia. Rest in peace, Tim Nill. And shout out to John Cashman, the legend. Convertible without counterpart. So again, I think another real elegant photo, kind of showing the sleekness of the car. You've got the lady and the dude over there on the left. And then, of course, you've got some artistic type stuff over on the right. I'm trying to keep this better with the lighting here. Few pleasures under the sun exceed that of owning the unique example of Lincoln Continental artistry. So pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Like I said, leave a comment if you like these cars. Maybe you own one. Maybe your family, your parents, your grandfather. Maybe you own one now. Maybe I'll go through more of this stuff here in the future. Elegance in action. So this was a photo that I've seen kind of circulate around. Well, it might actually be a rendering now that I'm looking at it a little bit closer, but I've seen this one on the internet before. And keep in mind, 1, 2s, and 3s, they had the 14-inch wheel, a little bit different hubcap. 64, 65 went to 15-inch, and they went to, the hubcaps, when I say slightly different, it's a lot different than this. Have a bunch kind of hanging as wall hangers, if you will. Luxury is the hallmark of the Lincoln Continental convertible. Interiors are a symphony of rich colors and gleaming metal. Glove soft leather combined with elegant crinkle grain vinyl edges and facings. So pretty cool. And again, love to kind of read, you know, the folks that were putting this stuff together. It's a different era, folks. One of my favorite photos in this brochure. Really cool. Just a good use of, you know, you barely see the tops of the doors here. So you're basically not seeing the door handles there. You just got that real sleek line there. And then you've got the deck lid, the hood, the suit, you know, showing the coach suicide doors on the driver's side, the lady checking it out. Just a different era. And then of course, wherever they're taking that photo, you've got kind of the hill type or mountainous area there, which I think is great. You got the lights lit up there for the entry. Of course, these cars would have been brand new. It's always curious to me how quickly they maybe took these photos and put these brochures together and had these at dealers. You know, if these cars were available, let's say in October, you know, were these brochures and pamphlets available weeks after they went on sale? Or, you know, were these the first off the production line, and then they, you know, they take one or two and then they take the photos and they kind of fast track the brochures? You know, I'm always kind of curious about that stuff. Guess we won't know unless anybody chimes in that had family that worked, but pretty cool stuff there to see all the details. That's right where the ashtray would have been. Looks like she's ready to smoke one there. But cool stuff. Different era. And then you could see the one of the things, I know the 1, 2s, and 3s from the side are a little bit harder for me to tell apart sometimes. I've talked about that in the past, but I think both 1s and 2s, the antenna was back here, right? So you had that antenna, and I've only seen one guy or one car do the dual antenna. I don't know exactly how he did it, but, you know, that was kind of cool. But basically in 63, you've got the antenna up here, and that's one easy tell if you're looking at the car and the antenna is extended, especially if it's on the passenger side. You can kind of easily tell and narrow it down. There's a couple other ways, but that's one way that I like to point out to people. So check this out. No car is more thoroughly proved before its first owner mile. And you can see some of the language there, 24,000 miles or 24 months. Of course, you think back, that was in 63. You know, now a lot of it's like 36,000 miles, and then you have the 100,000 mile powertrain, which doesn't seem to always even apply these days. My wife had a hiccup in her 2017 Ford Explorer, which was the only Ford we've ever purchased other than our Lincolns. And luckily it was covered, but, you know, did have a transmission issue. But you think back to this era, this was like unprecedented. Something else I like about it is I'll kind of go slow through here in case you want to take screen grabs or read this stuff. Tires and wheels balanced as units. They're talking about here the windows dipped in latex rubber to prevent corrosion or moisture. Here, kind of a cool photo again, showing other cars, kind of like simulating it in traffic. But, you know, again, different kind of photos like that would have been, you know, pretty neat for that era. Of course, way before drones. Here we can see a non-AC setup. How do we know that? One, we don't see the compressor on the right side. Above, right in here. Of course, this isn't all, I don't think, all decked out. I don't see the reservoir for the steering pump, but the air conditioning compressor would have been right here. And then, of course, I believe someone can chime in. I know in 64, it was a 5-blade fan, not a 4, if you had AC. I know that because my car had the wrong fan on it when I got it. And that was something Tony and I talked about. This was something, if you look back, there's no denying they tested everything. And the cars were kind of, some people would say, over-engineered in many ways, like with the steering, for instance, where the steering box mounts, they had those three kind of cushion rubbery bushings that, kind of fail over time. Of course, 60 years, and a lot of us just replace them with the steel ones or aluminum, but over-engineered, but they did test stuff. Their stuff was, they wanted it to be quality. Exceptional performance grows out of Lincoln Continental's great reserve smooth power, velvet smooth power. And then here is the twin range turbo drive trans. These cars shift, knock on wood, they shift really, really well, super smooth. Now, I have driven in a car, I helped sell a car that had a more modern transmission in it, and believe it or not, you couldn't tell at all driving the car. So I sometimes caution people to say, hey, well, the newer stuff, well, if you live in an area where nobody can rebuild your old school trans, and let's say you had to go with a newer school transmission like this guy did, the car felt like it was driving my car. It didn't feel any different. So that's something to keep in mind. 3 color coats of enamel applied over a coat of sealer and 2 coats of primer. So again, kind of reinforcing. I'd love to hear, a sales rep back in the day, salesmen in that era, pitch these cars to people and try to get them, to buy one, was probably a pretty easy sale if the person had the money and they could afford it. So here you go, again, just showing a few things. Equipped to fill every motoring need. Push button AM FM dual range, so we know the FM was an option, believe it or not. Speed control was an option. You'll often see those mounted. Typically, they may not work, but who cares? They look cool. Increased luggage capacity. If I remember correctly, so here's the confirmation. Contoured deck lid. Tony and I have talked about it. The deck lids are slightly a little bit different underneath towards the top, and it allowed for a little bit more space. You know how the OEMs would slice and dice things. Here you can see the speed control, which also known as cruise control. That's where it's mounted if it's an option. Again, there weren't a lot of options on these cars, and I guess less arguably in 63, because even though some folks have said we've never been able to confirm it, everything that we know, the 64 was the first year you could get the contour adjustable seats, also known as bucket seats. I know our friend Josh always says 63, really rare, but we've never been able to confirm that. And other than my friend Josh saying that, shout out to Josh Criswell, we've got no confirmation of that. So again, arguably, I think 63 probably had less options because it also did not have tilt. Ironically enough, we're getting to power steering. So standard, of course, on all Lincoln Continentals. You'd imagine on a car of this size, you'd want to have power steering. Power brakes also standard. Again, not until I watched a video recently from kind of a younger guy that did a video up at John at Stinkin' Lincoln's. He went through a 64 Lincoln Continental convertible, and he mentioned the single reservoir. And again, I think other people chimed in. Not until 67, I don't think it was mandated. But although they had power brakes, these earlier Lincolns in the 60s, they did have that single reservoir, which I always talk about really needs to be updated. If you own one of these cars or look to own one, you want to go to the dual reservoir. And that's so that if it gives out, you would have backup, if you will, with the other reservoir. And then here, as we kind of wind down this video, Regency fabric. So again, a little bit different. And I have to catch myself sometimes too, rarely seeing this pattern with that material. It almost doesn't even seem factory, especially if a car has not been well taken care of when I'm doing those reviews. But that is one of the options that they had. You can see, of course, here, one that a lot of us see over the years, the genuine leather. Silver cloud pattern cloth. So again, the cloth there in the middle. They also did have leather patterns here in the 64 catalog. This is all leather in one of the photos. And then the all wool back cloth, again, very kind of rare. And oftentimes I have to scratch my head and go, wow, it's like if I'm looking at a car, God, it doesn't look right. And then I can look back here in some of the literature and kind of go, oh, well, wait a minute. Yeah, they did have that. So it's kind of a constant learning process here. Specifications, so they talk about the 430, the exhaust system, fuel, cooling, electrical system. One of those photos back there, they talked about the, I guess an improved alternator, I think, and that was, you know, to kind of highlight in sitting in traffic, better charging, I guess, overall. But there you go, about 20 minutes. I didn't think it would take that long. I appreciate you guys coming back here. ODB, the Lincoln Addict again. If you want to check out LincolnAddict.com, you could buy a sticker and support the channel. We do have some shirts, although I think I'm going to turn off the site here for a couple days because we're going to be doing our Tampa Kennedy Cruise, our 5th annual, but possibly a re-up here in the future. Again, if you want to support, go out to LincolnAddict.com. There's also ways to listen to Lincoln Addict podcasts, including here on YouTube, although the earlier episodes are only available through different podcast channels. So you can go out to, like, on your iPhone, your pre-installed podcast app, Spotify, Pandora. Most of those will have Lincoln Addict podcast. It's free. There's no cost to listen. And certainly appreciate all the support. Everybody stay on the rise. And have a safe Thanksgiving holiday if we don't talk before then. We out of here. Peace.